Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another live community classroom with Michaels. We have our friend Marley Bird with us today to crochet this beautiful shawl in Caron cakes. My name is Renee L. from Yarn Inspirations, and I'll be helping with any questions you might have during today's class. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we'll make sure that Marley answers them. While we're getting ready to kick things off, let us know where you're watching from. Over to you, Miss Marley.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces in here. I always switch my view to gallery view so I can see you guys. So feel free to have your camera on if you want me to see you, but you do not have to at all. Very excited to be here with Michaels once again, teaching a fun class. And the great thing about this class is we're going to let the yarn colors do a lot of the work for us. The stitch pattern that we're using today is a linen stitch. It's a single crochet and a chain one. So we don't have to do a whole lot of really crazy crocheting to get a really great look. We let the yarn and its natural striping ability do most of the work for us. Our biggest concern when we're working on this is going to be making sure that we're consistent with our tension. So that way our triangles are all consistent in size. It's really easy to get our stitches a little bit tighter than they're supposed to be when you're working linen stitch, but I'm going to give you guys the tip that I do on my own end to make sure that that doesn't happen, because I actually really love linen stitch and I use it a lot. So I'm going to show you exactly what I do. And then we're going to talk through how to make sort of little adjustments if your gauge isn't off completely, or is your gauge is not on completely. How would you adjust the pattern to make it work for you? Because this is one of those patterns that the gauge is important, which you wouldn't think so because it's just a wrap. But in order for the stitch count to work, to be on the side of one of the triangles, you need to make sure that the gauge is working, but that'll all make sense as we go along. So let's go ahead, go down to the hands and take a look at what's happening here. So right down here, I have the pattern all printed out for us. And so we're doing the crochet oblique shawl. Sorry, my color ink is completely out, so I wasn't able to print it in color at all. But what's going on here are these are made in very large triangles. And like I said, the color work on the shawl is done from the yarn. So you get kind of a better view over here when you can see. You make the first triangle, and then the second triangle is built on the side of the first. Then the third is built on the side of the second, so on and so forth. And that's why the gauge is so important for this. If your stitches are not the same size as the way the pattern is written, when it comes time to start the second triangle, you could have too many stitches or too few stitches if your first triangle isn't the same size as what the pattern is written. However, I think we can make adjustments for that as we're going along. So we're going to attempt to do that together. Pretty easy stuff here. I am using Caron cotton cakes for the video. I love the way the striping happens on this. This might be surprising to you guys, but I actually like very rhythmic, very consistent striping. I don't know why. This is very pleasing to me. So this is what I'm using, but you really could use any of the cake yarns that are available out there to make this. And having said that, you don't have to use a striping yarn to make this. You could use a solid color yarn and it would just have a completely, different look. I'm going to use my size H crochet hook, and everybody knows, if you watched me before, it's a Susan Bates hook, but I have a larger handle because my hands start to cramp up, so I need the larger handle for my hook. But you'll need the hook size that you need to use to obtain the gauge for your piece. And then you could have a 7-inch piece of cardboard for the tassels. We can talk about that as we get to it. As we're looking at the abbreviation sections, I'm looking through this to see if there's anything that I don't understand. And all of this is pretty common generic abbreviations. There's nothing there that's extra special. I know that for Yarn Inspirations patterns, they use the YOH for yarn over hook instead of just a yo. So that might be something new to you, but it's pretty self-explanatory. When we get down here, this is where we're going to find our gauge. And if you've never really paid attention to what gauge is, essentially it's the math that the designer used to get the exact measurements of the shawl. So it's saying that, hey, it took the designer 18 stitches and 18 rows to get 4 inches in the single crochet chain one pattern, which is a linen stitch. And so if you happen to require more stitches to get 4 inches or fewer stitches, your measurements are going to be off, right? It's just like saying if I had, okay, let's say I have this piece here, it measures what it is, and I want this one to knit it up and measure, or crochet it up, measure what it is, but I end up crocheting it up and it's the size of this. That's a problem, right? If they're supposed to be these sizes, but it's this size, there's a problem. So that's where you want to make sure that your gauge is exactly on where you need it to be. Do you like my tools? Like, seriously, that's what I got. So we'll talk about gauge a little bit as we're going. And they even give you the note down here about gauge being important. So that way we can have the triangle edges line up. But without further ado, let's go ahead. We're going to jump into the first triangle. We're going to get a pretty good distance. We'll see how far we can get here in this start of the time frame. And I'm going to try and pull out the center here without pulling out guts, but I don't think that's going to happen for me. There we are. Satisfying, right, guys? Everybody knows what that's all about. So I'm just going to move my pattern up a little bit. Hopefully you can kind of still see it. If not, you can always download that pattern on your own. I'm pretty sure they've put a link in the chat here. And then if you're watching this on the replay on YouTube, you can always check the video description to get that pattern. It's available at yarnspirations.com. You could always just go to yarnspirations.com and type in crochet oblique shawl and it will pop up as well. All right, here we go. So we will begin with a slip knot on our hook. I'm going to move this because I feel like it's like directly underneath where I'm crocheting. So I hope you guys have your patterns with you. So I put the slip knot directly on my hook and we will chain 2. So chain 1, chain 2. Row 1 is the right side. So when you are looking at a pattern and you see instructions that are all inside parentheses, it's telling you that you're going to do all of those stitches inside the parentheses inside of the chain or the space or wherever it tells you to do outside of the parentheses. So we're going to do a single crochet, a chain 1, and a single crochet in the second chain from hook. So here we are, we have our stitches. So you never count the loop on your hook. Go to the second loop from hook or second chain from hook. We'll do a single crochet, a chain 1, and then another single crochet. So we have 3 stitches here. Okay. Now this feels like it's like a little nothing. So when we turn our work here, just kind of pay attention. I deliberately turn my work so that way I'm like, oh, all right. So I'm on the other side. I can make sure nothing's happening. I sort of just pinch it so I make sure it's not flopping around on me. And we continue on to row 2, where we do a chain 1. We're going to single crochet in the first single crochet. So right here, if you guys see where I'm going here. So I'm going to go underneath both loops and work my single crochet. Now I chain 1 and single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So the chain 1 space is right there. It's kind of hard to see. Just kind of, if you can see the post stitches of your original single crochets, you know that the chain is right in between those. So we'll single crochet in that chain 1 space. And then we chain 1 and we single crochet in the last stitch. Now we have 5 stitches. Again, it doesn't look like much. Kind of be very deliberate with your movements and actions here. And one thing I will end up doing here is I'm going to add a stitch marker to the right side of our fabrics. That way we can know which is our right side and our wrong side. It'll make it easier. So as I'm here, I turn my work. I'm on row 3, and row 3 is the right side again. So I'm just going to take my marker and just put it literally in the fabric itself on this side. So that way, as if something like that happens, I'm like, oh, I don't know where I am. I can just adjust and say, okay, there it is. My yarn is on my hook over here towards my right because I'm right-handed. I have the fabric facing this way because I'm on row 3, and I have my marker there to make sure that I'm just oriented correctly. We're on the 3rd row. So we will start off with a chain 1, single crochet in the first single crochet. So once again, I'm going to go right here, single crochet in the first single crochet. Then I chain 1 and single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So chain one, single crochet in the next chain one space, chain one, skip the next single crochet, no, skip next single crochet, one single crochet in the next chain one space. So we're going to skip this single, come right over here to the next chain one space and work a single over there. Then we chain one, and then we put a single in the last stitch of our row. If you are not able to identify the first and the last stitch of your row, we can use markers to help out with that. So I will show you how to do that here in just a second. So that's the end of row 3. We should have 7 stitches. I'm going to turn my work. While I turn my work, I'm going to grab 2 more stitch markers because we're going to add these to the start of our rows. Actually, I'm going to add these ones. I'm going to change this up a little bit, make it so they're easier to get in and out. Okay, so I'm on my 4th row, which is my wrong side. I chain 1 and I single crochet in the first single crochet. So right here, I'm going to single crochet in the first single crochet. Once I complete that, you can see that there's a loop on your hook and there's that V behind your hook. That's the top of the single crochet you just completed. I'm going to put my marker right there. What happens is when I come back on row 5, I know that that's the last stitch of my row. So now I can find it really, really easily. So if this is something you've struggled with before, markers are going to be your friend. So I've done a single crochet in the first single, and now I'm going to chain 1. And from here on out, I want to really make sure that my chain 1s are consistent in size. So here's what I do. When I yarn over and I chain 1, they're all pretty consistent, but it's really easy to just yarn over, chain 1, and then pull on it a little bit to make that chain a little bit tighter, because you're thinking, oh, that's just going to make things a little bit more snug and tidy and so on and so forth. But what it does is it starts to tighten up your row. So one thing that I will do is I will take my hook and I essentially make it vertical. So that way, like, pretend I'm putting well, am I going to put a stitch right there? Yeah. So I'm going to single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So I'm supposed to chain 1 and then put a single crochet right there. So what I do is I will make it vertical so I can make sure that the loop on my hook is the correct size, essentially. Like if I'm like, oh, if it was supposed to be all the way over there, you can see that pulls the yarn, but it's like right there. I don't know if this makes any sense. I kind of go vertical and then I do my chain. So I make sure that the chain is the same size as the stitch beneath it. Does that make sense? Am I making sense, you guys? I don't know if I am or not. If this chain right here, the resulting V, is smaller than the stitch beneath it, then I know I've made my chains too tight. Or opposite, if it's bigger than this beneath, I know I'm making them too big. So just kind of by, I guess, turning my hook vertical like this, it allows me to just like partner that up with this just to check on sizing. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's literally what I do when I do linen stitch. I'm like, oh, I just make sure that goes along. Yeah, it's like you're measuring it against the one underneath it. All right, so let me get back to where I was. So we single crocheted, chain 1, we single crochet in the next chain 1 space. Then we chain 1, skip the next single crochet. So it appears we're skipping that center one all the time. So we skip the next single crochet and then repeat from star. So I go back to star where I will single crochet over here. All right, so watch this. I did that chain. I'm going to bring my hook over here to the chain 1 space where I'm supposed to do my single crochet, right? But can you see how I can measure here that my chain is the same length or size as the single crochet I'm skipping? Can you see what I mean? Like I make sure it's not too tight or too loose. And it helps with consistency. I don't know. I don't know if that helps any of you, but it helps me quite a bit. So then so I singled, I chain 1, and then I'm going to single in the last stitch of the row. Is that correct? Did I do that right? Let me see. Repeat from star to the last. Single crochet in the next chain 1, single crochet. I'm talking to you guys and I'm losing my spot. Sorry. Okay, so I skipped this one and then it repeated from star. So I single crochet in the chain one space, chain one, skip the next single crochet. So we're going to skip this one again. All right. Can you see how I measure them? Go to the next chain one space, single crochet, and then I will single crochet in the last single crochet of the row. Because the linen stitch is all about skipping single crochets. All right. Does that make sense? Let's do it again. Whew. All right. I feel like I need to take a drink of coffee real quick. Some of you look very excited out there. Let me just tell you. Okay. We're going to turn our work. So we are repeating the last row. So on row 4, we will chain 1, single crochet in the first single crochet right here. Remember, we have the loop on our hook. It does not count as a stitch. So that V behind it, that's the top of that single crochet. So now I know where the last stitch of the next row will be. So I'm going to mark that. And now I will chain 1, right? Again, it's like I'm measuring it against my single crochet there. It's just what I do. I'm going to single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So my next chain 1 space is right here. Chain 1. Skip the next single. Single crochet in the next chain 1 space. Chain 1. Skip the next single. Single crochet in the next chain 1 space. And at the end of my row, so I single crochet in that last single crochet. Okay, see that? All right, so then I turn, chain 1, single crochet in the first single crochet, move my marker up, do my chain 1 to start. Now single crochet in the next chain 1 space, which is right over here. Chain 1, skip the next single crochet, single crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, skip the next single crochet, single crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, single crochet in the last single crochet. If at all, if I am getting off track at all in the pattern, y'all, because I'm trying to talk and everything at the same time, just let me know. Not that I think I am. I'm just letting you know. If I do, just let me know. You can see here what it looks like is the single crochets. It's almost like a checkerboard because you're skipping a single and doing the single crochets in the chain 1 spaces. They're staggered. So you're going to see those V's and they're kind of staggered. Like I said, I love this stitch. It's like a linen stitch. It's very pretty. Chain 1 turn, single crochet in the first single crochet. Move our marker. Don't forget to do your chain 1. Now we have our repeat, single crochet in the next chain 1 space, which is right here. I think I skipped one of the chain 1 spaces down here, didn't I? You guys, anybody catch it? I think I did. I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to keep going. But essentially, I'm just going to chain 1, skip a single, go to the next chain 1, chain 1. And here's where I'm coming over here to this chain 1 space. Again, I'm making sure that my chain is the same size as the single crochet I'm skipping. Chain 1, come over here. Right? Because we end, see chain 1, we end, there's a, the chain 1 and then single crochet right here. I'm very quiet. I'm quiet again? Can you hear me now? I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's going here. I'm going to try and move my camera this way a little bit closer to my microphone. Is that better? You guys can tell me if that's better, Leah. Is that making sense to everybody? All right, so we're a few minutes into it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to undo all of this and we're going to start it again real quick. Since now we've worked a little ways into it, we're going to start it again so we can get a better look at it. I don't know if you guys ever do this, but when I'm in classes with people, I try and we'll get something started and then we rip it out and we start it again, because usually the second time it always works out a little bit better than the first, because we kind of have a better understanding of what we're doing. So let's do this all one more time. We start off with our slip knot. Put this on our hook. And we chain 2. So chain 1, chain 2. Row 1 is our right side row, and we do a single crochet in the second chain from hook, a chain 1, and another single crochet in the second chain from hook. Right? That's our right side. So if I wanted to, I could mark this right now as my right side, just for orientation sake. Okay. Turn our work. We're on row 2. We chain 1, single crochet in the first single crochet. We can add our marker right here so that we know that that's the first single crochet. And then we chain 1, single crochet in the next chain 1 space, right here, right in the middle. And then chain 1, and then 1 single crochet in the last single crochet. So we have 5 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Turn our work. We're now on row 3, which is our right side. So I should be looking at my marker, and I am. It's great. So we chain 1, single crochet in the first single crochet. Take our marker, place it into that first stitch, so that way we know where it is. Chain 1, 1 single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So I had a chain 1 right here, right? So I'm going to single crochet in the next chain 1 space. Chain 1, skip the next single crochet, single crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, single crochet in the last single crochet, and turn. So row 4. Row 4 is our repeat row. So this next row is the row we're going to repeat. Chain 1, single crochet in the first single crochet. Move our marker up. Then we chain 1. Okay, so at the end here, we have a single crochet and a chain 1. So just so that you make note of that. Then we're going to do a single crochet in the next chain 1 space, which is right here. All right, so the chain 1 space is right next to our single crochet here at the edge. I'm pretty sure I missed that on the last one. So we're going to single crochet right there. Then we chain 1. You skip 1 single crochet, and you will single crochet in the next chain 1 space. This is the linen stitch. You will always single crochet in those chain 1 spaces. Then you chain 1, skip the next single crochet in the next chain 1 space. And it's at this point where I'm talking about, so I'm coming over here to this next chain 1 space. So as I go into it, that's where I make sure that the chain I did is essentially the same width as the single crochet I'm skipping, so I don't let it get too tight. Work my single crochet. Do not forget to do this chain 1 and then single crochet in the last stitch. I think I forgot to do that a couple times in the last one. What we're doing is we're creating like more stitches now, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches. We're at the end of row 3, we had 7 stitches. So we're creating an extra stitch at the start and an extra stitch at the end. All right, so let's repeat this. I'm already happier with this one than I was with the second or the first one. Turn my work, chain 1, single crochet in the first single crochet. Move my marker up, chain one, single crochet in the first chain one space, chain one, work to the next chain one space. So you would do this all the way across until you get to the end. Chain one. Remember at the end, you do that chain one and then single crochet in that last stitch. And those chain ones there, the one right before the last single crochet and the one right after the first single crochet, that's what is allowing our triangle to grow. I am fairly certain that I messed up on the very first one I did. So I'm glad we restarted. So I chain one, go into my single crochet, move this up, and continue on. So I'm going to keep working here so that we can get ourselves a little triangle happening. That way we have something to work on to. As I'm doing that, I'm going to ask Renee, how's everybody doing in the chat? If you guys have any questions or you want to, just say something nice, let us know in the chat. Renee will let me know right now, since I'm looking at my crochet and the pattern, it's hard for me to see the chat. So Renee is a gem. She's able to help me out here.
I do my best. It's pretty quiet, but I thought this was an interesting conversation. Or someone said, I'm new to this. Do people find crocheting easier, quicker, faster, etc., than knitting? What do you think, Marley?
Oh gosh. All right. So as a teacher, I find teaching people how to knit easier than teaching people how to crochet. But overall, I think crochet tends to be a little bit easier than knitting. That's not to say knitting is hard or crochet is hard. I find them both equally about the same. But again, everything's easy once you know how to do it. However, it's just a matter of manipulating the yarn. I think what's more important is, what I have noticed the most is crocheters tend to be a little bit more and I don't know what, maybe you can give me the right term for this, but I'm going to say a little bit more artsy fartsy, a little bit more easygoing, just kind of fudge it along the way, and creative and whimsical. I'm not saying that knitters are not. I'm just saying that crocheters tend to be a little bit more along those lines in my experience teaching knitters and crocheters. Whereas a lot of knitters tend to be a little bit more type A, a little bit more, everything needs to be very organized, very regimented. Because when you're knitting, you're dealing precisely with just the stitches on your needle. Very seldom do you go down to work stitches in a different place. Like, there are stitch patterns that do that. But for the most part, it's a very just straightforward back and forth, where crochet, when you crocheters know, you can put your hook literally anywhere. So there's a lot more options and a lot more whimsy to it. So I find that a lot of people who are a little bit more type A prefer knitting over crochet. And then you do get those whimsical people who are, I'm going to call them crocheters at heart, but they're knitters. And so you get some of the most interesting knitting patterns out there from people who are a little bit more crochet hearted, but have a knitting aptitude. Does that make any sense? And I mean, this is not science, you guys. This is not like I did a study. Like, this is just my experience. This is all.
Yeah, I think that's really a common experience. I've heard though, I can't remember which way it was. Someone, possibly you, had said it is easier to teach knitting to crocheters
Yes.
versus crochet to knitting people, but I don't remember which direction it was.
So I
This could
think
be
teaching,
misinformation. Who knows?
yeah, I think teaching knitting to crocheters is easier than vice versa. Because crocheters are already used to putting their hooks everywhere. So you give them knitting, and at first they freak out. They're like, oh, it's 2 needles, I can't do it. When really, guys, look, I'm holding my yarn like this, right? I'm holding it like this. This is just like knitting, right? Instead of holding my fabric here, I would just be holding a needle, right? That's all it is. That's the difference. So when people are like, oh, I can't hold 2, it's like, but you're already holding 2. You just don't really realize it because one of your two is your fabric. Does that make sense? Whereas for knitters, once again, going back to the whole idea is everything is on their needles. And so they get a little bit distracted with the fact that they could put their hook just anywhere. They're like front loop, back loop, post stitch, drop stitch. Like they're like, what, where do I put my hook? And they struggle with it a little bit. But then, I mean, it's like the Matrix. Once you see it, it's like one day everything becomes very clear. One day you're looking at it and you're like, oh, I get it. And it just opens up for you. And so it's just a matter of time for when that happens for each individual. And honestly, I truly believe if anybody wants to knit and crochet, you can absolutely learn to knit and crochet. It's a skill that a lot of people have. It might take more time for you than others to get it, but that doesn't mean you won't ever get it. Anyways, so I'm just going along here. How many of you are doing this too? I'm just cruising here, working along. I always want to skip this first chain one space, but I need to remember I don't need to do that. Make sure I keep it in place. So we're supposed to just keep going on this triangle here until it measures 17 inches. Okay. And it says we're supposed to end with a right side row, ending on a right side row. So I am just going to end. Now, when it says, that always throws me off, right? When it says end on a right side row, because I'm never sure if I'm supposed to finish the right side row or am I supposed to end where I'm just supposed to start a right side row. It's always confusing to me. So I will usually end and leave myself enough slack. So if I need to add another row or remove some rows, I'm all ready to go with it. I'm going to go just like this. And it says ending on a right side row. So I'm on a right side row. You can see my triangle is starting to take its shape. So let's pull our work in and just kind of take a peek because it is nowhere near 17 inches. We don't have the time for that, right? So right here, you keep going, repeat until the shorter side measures 17 inches. So not this long edge, but this edge here, one of these has to measure 17 inches. Then you come over here to the second triangle. It says turn your work clockwise and work across the short side. And then it says fifth row. So this, because we've been doing rows 1 through 4, it says fifth row, chain one single crochet in each side of the first single crochet. Chain one single crochet in the side of the first single crochet. Chain one single crochet in the next space 38 times across shorter side of first triangle to foundation chain. Turn 77 stitches. So ultimately, guys, I guess my takeaway from this is if you can get 77 stitches on the side of your triangle, great. So let's look at this. I'm looking at my thing here. So it looks like I'm supposed to end at the end of a right side row, because if I'm looking at my chart here, here's my start, the arrow is pointing this way. Here's my start, arrow is pointing this way. And it shows the second triangle worked along this edge. So my yarn would have to be down there. So that answers our question. So I have to finish at the end of a right side row. Then it appears I rotate my work clockwise. That would make sense. So I'm rotating my work clockwise. So I'm still on my right side because it shows here, right here, fifth row, right side. I don't know if you can see fifth row, right side. So I've turned my work. I'm on my right side. And then I would single crochet. Essentially, you're going to start and end with the single crochet and then work that linen stitch all the way down until you can get 77 stitches. Now let's keep reading here. Sixth row, chain one, single crochet 2 together over the first stitch and the next chain 1 space. Chain 1, skip the next single crochet, 1 single crochet in the next chain 1 space. We know that. That's our linen stitch repeat. And then it says to the last single crochet, 1 single crochet in the last single crochet and turn. So we're working a decrease here. And the other thing you'll notice, so you're here single crochet 2 together over the first stitch and the next chain 1 space. And then you do your linen stitch, repeat from start to the last single crochet. What is missing there that we were doing on row 4? You guys notice? Repeat from start to the last single crochet. And then it says 1 single crochet in the last single crochet. There's not a chain 1 there. Remember before when I was like, hey, don't forget this chain 1. Don't forget that chain 1. That was our increase. So because we're decreasing over here, they don't have us do that chain 1. So we're going to decrease 2 stitches. Where on this triangle, we were increasing 2 stitches. We increased 1 over here and increased 1 over here. When we work back and forth to get the other triangle, because we're starting at the wide point and going back to the narrow point, we will decrease over here and decrease over here. On this side, actually, so we'll work across. On this side, you'll do your single crochet 2 together. Over here, you don't have to do a 2 together. You literally just eliminate that chain 1 that we had added before. Okay, so that's how this is going to be different here. The starting and the ending are going to be different. Then we have the 7th row. Chain 1 single crochet in the first single crochet, chain 1, skip the next single, 1 single crochet in the next chain. That's our linen stitch repeat. We know that. To the last 3 stitches, chain 1, skip the next single crochet 2 together over the next chain 1 space and the last single crochet and turn. So right here on row 7, we're missing that chain 1 at the start that we had on row 4. So on row 4, let's go back here again. Remember, we had our single crochet and then our chain 1, and then we went into our repeat. On row 7, we have our single crochet, and then we go directly into our repeat. So we don't have that chain 1, which was our increase. Is that making sense to you guys? Yeah, I'm trying to help you understand like how this shaping is working. Good. Thank you, Heather. Okay. So as you're working across, then you have your single crochet 2 together. So it's just as easy as, you know, you have your single crochet 2 together, and then single, or this, and then chain, and then single and chain and single. And then you are not doing a single and you just do a single at the end. Then you're turning your work, you're coming back, you have a single where you would normally do a chain there when we did it on here. You are not. You will do a single right there, and then you'll chain 1 and single right there. And then let's see here, does it single crochet in this, chain 1, skip this. So you do chain 1, see here, single crochet, chain 1, skip the next single, single crochet in the next chain 1 space, repeat, chain 1, skip, single, and then repeat from start of the last 3. So it says chain 1 and then skip the next single crochet 2 together over chains. So you'll end up getting a triangle that works like this. Whereas before we were starting at the tip and going this way. So we were increasing it out. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope it does. Next row, chain 1, single crochet 2 together, turn, do not fasten off. Repeat the last 2 rows until 2 stitches remain. Woo! Anybody else? Woo! Okay, let's give this a whirl. So I'm going to get up to the other end here. So we've answered that question. So now we know that we're supposed to end at the end of a right side row. Renee, how you feeling out there?
Good. My dog just has a few things to say, so I'm going to go on mute for a moment, but
Okay.
there was one question. I have more of a shell than a triangle. Did I do something wrong?
It could be that your chains are going a little bit opposite. Are you saying that it's more like curved like this? If it's more curved along like that, just make sure that your side edges are not too crimped down, because you could be pulling it down. Try and keep things as straight as possible. And just know this is cotton, so you can block these out so it's a little bit more straight, just like so. It's going to be all about your tension. All right, so I've done my single, I've done my chain 1. Did I do my chain 1? I don't remember doing my chain 1. We're going to go back and just check to make sure I did my chain 1. Yes, I did. There it is right there. And then my single right here, and then work across my row. Somebody is asking where I got my hook. I got my hook on Etsy, you guys, but there are a lot of wonderful ergonomic hooks out there. But I got spoiled with Susan Bates, so I went looking for a different hook handle with my Bates hook, so that way I could crochet longer, because I found my hand cramping up too much if I didn't have a handle. All right, so what I'm going to do, I am not going to get 77 stitches, obviously, on the side of my triangle, but we're just going to work along the side of our triangle and see how many stitches we get. So let's follow along with what this says. So I'm at the end of my right side. I have my triangle. Turn your work clockwise. So turn my work clockwise and work across the short edge. Great. We have that right here. Just move that real quick. It says chain 1. So I have my right side facing me. That's what we want. So I will chain 1 single crochet in the side of our first single crochet. So there's my first single crochet. I'm just going to poke my hook right through the center of it and work a single crochet right there. And then I'm going to put my marker into that V behind the loop on my hook. Okay. All right. Now we have in parentheses, chain 1 single crochet in the next space. So I chain 1 and single crochet in the next space. I'm guessing right there. And it says to do that 38 times. So I chain 1 and work in the space. So I am just going to chain 1 and work into each space all the way to the end without counting, how many I've done or anything. I'm just chaining 1, going to the next space. Chaining 1, go to the next space. Let's just try this out, and it's easy to rip out if we need to. If you were working on the actual shawl, you would do this so that you get it 38 times across the short edge of the first triangle. So here I am, I'm down here to the foundation chain. I'm guessing that's where I want to be. I mean, it looks good to me. I'm gonna do one more just to see and put it like literally into that chain that we started with, just to play with it. So that's my side triangle right there. Can you see it? Even though it's not a different color yet, hopefully you can see that. Let's play with it and see what we get. So we would now, you're at the end, you turn your work. So this would be my 6th row. This is where I'm going to start working my decreases. So I will chain 1 and then single crochet 2 together over the first single crochet and the next chain 1 space. So here's my first single crochet. Here's my chain 1 space. So here's how you do a single crochet 2 together. You go into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Go into the chain 1 space, yarn over, pull up a loop. So you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, draw through all 3 loops on your hook. You'll have a V behind the loop on your hook, which is the top of your stitch. So I'm going to put my marker there. And now we carry on. So we chain 1, skip the next single crochet in the chain 1 space. And we'll do this all the way to the end. So chain 1, skip a single, go to the chain 1 space. You should be familiar with this. This is the linen stitch. Susan, I see you out there, but I don't see you working. Are you just hanging out with me today? All right. Glad you're here. It's always nice to see you. All right, so I'm just going to keep going. Go ahead, Renee.
I was going to say, I thought this was an interesting question. If you wanted a specific color scheme, could you do a bunch of first triangle patterns, then slip them together? First triangle is in quotation marks or air quotes.
Like this one? Yeah, you could. You could even just change colors as you're going. Like you don't have to let the yarn change the colors. You could change the colors if you wanted to. Yeah, absolutely. Lost my train of thought. All right, so here I am.
Sorry.
I know. Skip the single, go to the chain one space. And so here I am at the end. This would be where I would have done is chain one and then my single, but I'm just going to do my single because that's going to give me my decrease that I want at that end. Okay. Turn my work, chain one. I'll move my marker up here in a minute. Single crochet in the first single crochet. Here we go. Single crochet in the first single. Now I chain one, skip the next single. So right there, I'm skipping that. And then single crochet in the next chain one space. So what this just did without doing a decrease, I decreased because I didn't have that chain one there. So it's going to bring it in. And then work my linen stitch. Again, we know how this works. Make sure that your chains are nice and consistent. The chains are the ones that will be the death of you, you guys. I did an entire sweater pattern using this stitch pattern. It's beautiful. It's called the Hamilton cardigan. If you ever are on Ravelry, you want to check it out. It's really beautiful, but it's one of those stitch patterns. Again, if you are not consistent with those chains, you could have, you could have a wavy fabric all the time, no matter how many stitch markers you keep. And so it's just one of those things. All right, I'm down to the last 3 stitches, and that's what it tells me to. It tells me to chain one, skip the next single. So here's my chain and here's my single, and this I'm going to do a single crochet 2 together. So I will go into the chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, go into the single, yarn over, pull up a loop. So I have 3 loops on my hook, yarn over my hook, and pull through all 3 loops. And then turn. So we repeat those last 2 rows. So here we go. So we're going back to row 6. So I chain one. We're going to do a single crochet 2 together. So every time we're over here at this end where my blue marker is, we will begin and end with single crochet 2 togethers. And my other end, we just eliminate that chain one to get our decrease. Chain one, do our linen stitch. Chain one, do our linen stitch. What's good about me doing this smaller size here is you can see that if your gauge is off and you just want to change the numbers, you just kind of follow the same path that I just did, and it should all just work out because you're just doing a decrease every row at both ends, just like on the first triangle, you did an increase every row at both ends. So it should work out the same way. Down here. And then do not do that chain one, just single crochet in the end. There we go. That was 6. Turn my work. Chain one. This is row 7. Single crochet. My marker up. Chain one. Skip the single. Stitch across. I'm curious as you guys are watching me do this. I know a lot of people are knife holder crochet hook holders. I am obviously a pencil crochet crochet hook holder, not book, hook. I'm curious what a lot of you are out there. Down here at my blue stitch marker end, so I want to make sure I do my single crochet 2 together. Knife, pencil, knife, all across the board here. I can hold it like a knife because that's how I hold my knitting needles, but my grandmother taught me how to use it or how to do it like a pencil. So I never even knew you could hold it like a knife until later on when I was watching my best friend Robin Chichula crochet, and she holds it like a knife, and I was like, well, that's fascinating. So for me, it's very natural just to hold it like a pencil, and so I gravitate towards that. Like I can hold it like a knife. It's not as fluid. You can see it's just not as fluid. But in a fun turn of events, if I'm showing somebody how to crochet left-handed, I hold it like a knife, which is always interesting to me, that I gravitate towards that. I think that's due to my my knitting. All right, so I've turned my work. So I'm back to a right side. Yeah, is that right? Yeah, so I'm on a row 7 because that's the right side. So a chain 1, skip. Let's see, I did chain 1 there, and keep going. Gotta try and keep on track. See how those markers really help me as far as seeing the right side versus the wrong side, um, just for orientation purposes, because both sides look the same. So it's very difficult to see it happen. All right, so I'm to the last 3 stitches here. So I do my single crochet 2 together over the chain and the single. Turn and chain 1. I always chain 1 and turn. That's, if you're like, well, you did the opposite. It's just, they both do the same thing, but I always chain 1 and turn. I'm just going to keep going. All right, Renee, how's everything going over there?
It's good. It seems like a lot of folks are leaning more towards the knife hold, which is interesting.
Yeah, you know, that seems to be the case. Seems to be the case. I think it's all a matter of how you were taught. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's just like, and the other thing is the hook you were taught with makes a big difference on what hook you like, because they're different, right? The Susan Bates is in line, and then there's other hooks out there that are much more rounded. And so if you were taught on the rounded version of a hook, when you go to get the Susan Bates inline hook, you might have trouble like grabbing your yarn or feel like it snags your yarn or all the different things. And what I have found, because I was taught on a rounded hook, um, when I started working for Red Heart, I went to the incline, the inline one with for Bates, is I crochet slightly different with each hook depending on the hook I'm using. And it's just something about the way I twist my hook and grab my yarn. It's just a little bit different depending on what hook I'm using. And so, I mean, and who would really know that? Because really, you get a hook, you like a hook, you never trade hooks. Like it's like you're trading religions, right? You're like, nope, I'm a Bates fan. That's all I am. You don't ever go to anything else or vice versa. So having the opportunity to change hooks because I needed to, it gave me the chance to kind of be like, oh, when I use my Susan Bates hook, I crochet like this. When I use this other hook, I crochet a little bit differently. And, you know, I never would have realized that before, you know? All right, so chain 1, do my there. This is not a decrease side because it's not the blue stitch marker. Chain 1 and turn. I'm just going along here. I hope you guys are too. I hope I didn't miss anything as I'm just talking, but if we did, we know we can just rip it out. It's not too difficult. But you can see here that it just becomes very rhythmic and you don't have to really think too much about it. I say that as, you know, I possibly mess up. But it's just a nice little stitch pattern. Let me keep going. When you get to the next triangle, because there's a third triangle, we're going to build up a triangle again because we will be down to fewer stitches, I do believe. No, I'm incorrect. We are working on the side, so we're gonna decrease again, but it changes a little bit, probably the decrease side or the stitch that we use to decrease. All right, can I just tell you, this is so handy. Knowing that I said out loud that the blue marker side is where I do my single crochet 2 together at the start has helped me so much because I'm like, oh, okay, I'm on a row 6. Like that just, so I highly recommend using colored stitch markers, you guys, because it is like helping me immensely. We are almost out of time here, but I think I've showed you a lot of the skills you need to complete this project. And then I wish the yarn I'd gotten to the color change part so you could see it a little bit better. But all right, so word to the wise. Remember I told you that I was going to put like one extra chain one and single crochet into my foundation like chain. It looks like it's a little bit big, so I don't think I would do that again. But it's coming down, this increase, this is coming down. When I get to the end, I do not fasten off. Third triangle, turn work clockwise. And so then we'll build over here. And so we'll build and build this way, and then turn this way and build this way. So you end up getting these triangles of colors that look really great. Hopefully that works for you guys. I'm gonna see if there are any questions, any extra tips. I mean, I honestly, the stitch markers are huge. Use the stitch markers because they will help you understand, whether you're on the right side or wrong side of your work. If you're going to change up the number of stitches you do along the side, lesson learned here. I wasn't sure if I should put one down there in that chain one space where I did my first 3 stitches. Looking at it now, I don't like it. So I don't think I would have added it there. I would have ended just one in. So now you guys know that. If you're working on the pattern though, just to, make sure you get the 77 stitches, or change it up. Like you could change it up just like I did here and figure it out. The other thing here, I'm wondering, I don't know, it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go back to my face, Renee. I'm going to look at, I can see all the comments now that I'm looking away from my work. How's everybody doing? Leah, how'd it go? Oh, look at that. It looks beautiful. It's beautiful. That is very consistent and gorgeous. That looks so good. All right, so here's the fun thing, guys. We already talked about this a little bit about the Caron cake. So these are the cotton cakes. They have a lot of variety of different cake yarns out there. They have some, this one in particular says it's varied stripes cakes. Renee, what was it that we decided the name of the yarn is?
I think this can be done with really any of the cakes, but
Yeah.
like any of the cotton cakes, there's painterly cakes, which is really, really beautiful and gives you nice color work. But
yeah,
try all the cakes.
Yeah, I think you could do anything. I mean, you could even, guys, you could use multiple colors. You could make one triangle out of one color of one cake and make another triangle out of a different cake in a different color, and really get a lot of mix and matching going on. Like, have fun with this. It's a pretty easy pattern as far as the linen stitch. Be very careful with those chains. You want to make sure they aren't getting too tight. So if you're somebody who likes to come home from work and crochet, if you've had a very stressful day, make sure you relax a little bit before you pick up your crochet, because it will be reflective in your crochet project for sure. Zara, how's it going? I can see you crocheting like mad over there. Looks great. That's a beautiful color. Oh my gosh, I love seeing your guys' work as you work along with me. Thank you for sharing with me. Just so you know, we love seeing your work online. So if you are working this up, share with us on social media. I'm on Instagram. I'm the Marley Bird on Instagram. There's also Yarnspirations and Michaels. You can do hashtag Make It With Michaels, hashtag Michaels Classes, hashtag Yarnspo. If you want to tag me, just do hashtag Marley Bird. I follow that hashtag so that way I can see all the different work. And if you're interested in any other projects, I have a lot of different things happening on my own website, so you can check that out. And then be sure to sign up for the newsletters for mine and Michael's and Yarnspirations, because they are full of patterns, inspiration, and ideas. It was a joy spending this last hour with all of you. I hope you had a good time. Renee, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Awesome. I just had 2 quick questions that I'm going to answer. Renee, it is through, and then someone had asked if it's possible to save the chat, and I think it is. If you go to the little text box where you were typing your messages, there's 3 little dots, and I think you should be able to save the chat, because I know there was a lot of really great resources in here. So that is that. Aside from that, Marley covered a lot of it off. You're really coming for my job here, which is okay.
I don't think so. Not even close.
All right. Thanks for joining us today. This was so much fun. As Marley said, don't forget to share your work and hashtag Make It With Michaels and hashtag Yarnspo. That's YARNSPO. And a reminder that you can find more classes on michaels.com and a recording of today's class at michaels.com/classes. All right. Have a great great day. Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
guys. Bye, Susan. Bye, Renee. Bye,
Bye.
Angela. Oh, all the faces. Hi. Oh, I didn't even see you over there. It's so good to see you guys. All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.